It's fun. It's fun to have that little bit of connection. Like she knows who you guys are. But I think the other part of it is like, for me, when your kids see you taking those risks and doing the things and stepping outside the comfort zone, it gives them the permission to do it too. Hey, Emily, thank you so much for coming on the episode. I am so honored to have you here. I am so excited. I have been so honored to know you over the last, it's been a little over a year now.
Yeah,
And
that's crazy.
so happy our worlds collided. And so I'm like, I can't believe it's been almost that long, but we haven't had done a podcast episode. I think we've tried, but now we finally made it happen. And I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you. I am super honored to be here. And it's crazy that you say that we've only known each other for a little over a year now, because I feel like it's so much longer, but also not
Mhm.
long at all in the best ways possible.
I know.
So yeah, it's crazy.
Isn't that crazy? Like this morning I was reading a book, and in the book it's like talking about how like time is an illusion. The only thing that exists is right now. And it's like going on into all this like quantum physics. I'm like, this is outside of my scope of what my brain can actually fathom, but I'll like sit and entertain it at the same time of like multi-universes and like time and distort like this whole thing. I'm like, I'm just gonna, yes. But yes, it's weird how time can warp that way. So
Yeah, for sure.
So I know you really well, and I know you originally like came to the first, well, not the first, but the retreat last year. That was like our first interaction, like our first touch point. And I remember it was you were the last person that added on, and I think you made the decision to come to the retreat literally like Sunday and then showed up on Friday. Like it was
Yes,
literally
absolutely.
days. And I remember going to your Instagram account. I mean, like, she looks so cool. I cannot wait to have her here. Like, this is so amazing. And I just thought what you did in the like aerospace world and working with astronauts and things like that, like, was just like, I can't, it's like so outside of my box, like so outside of my world, like so cool. And then to like actually meet you and be able to connect with you and to see all of the things you've done over just the time I've known you has just been phenomenal and amazing. So I would love for you to share one about like what it is that you do and who do you serve and like how do you help them and how did you get to that place?
Yeah. Well, so I want to start by explaining this term analog missions, because I'm going to reference it quite a bit. And I feel like people, it's like a very foreign thing. And I forget about that. I feel like in my industry, a lot of people know about what analog missions are and what that entails. But I know for the general audience, like people don't really know what that is. So basically, what we do in an analog mission, they are human spaceflight analogs, and they are ground-based research stations that basically test various elements for the purpose of benefiting humans either on Earth or in space. It's much more cost effective to test things out here on Earth before we send it to space, whether that's your crew dynamics or specific technologies, communications, engineering, whatever it might be. So, analog missions or analog habitats are basically in these environments that replicate as close as possible to an extraterrestrial body. So, if you think of living life on Mars, we use the desert to kind of embody what that might be like. Or the moon, we go to volcanoes or lava tubes or something like that. And so analog astronauts are individuals that essentially participate in these missions. They either bring in their own research, they might be PhD candidates working on a master's thesis or something like that. Or they are kind of what I like to call just like lab rats. They are the test subjects where someone else is coming in to do research on something specific, and you get to kind of be the person that tests that out for them. And so that's kind of just like a really quick, brief overview of what analog missions are, what analog astronauts are, and kind of what we do and why we do it. There's a lot of talk right now about kind of defining what that is in a more constructive way, because this a little niche of the space industry or aerospace industry is not quite defined yet. And so there's a lot of reasons that we do analog missions, and that is either for the purpose of research and science, for training, or for education and outreach. And so I'm having a lot of fun really diving into helping shape what the industry looks like
Mhm.
to help it grow and help it be really impactful for the space industry as a whole.
Yeah, that's so cool. I know, I like, when I first I was like, "I have no idea what an analog mission is," so I'm glad you did that. How did you get into this space? Like, tell us about the Emily that, like, decided, "This is the journey I'm gonna go on."
I could tell you like a really long story, but I think what it really comes down to is the fact that there have been moments that I have been so fearful of in
Mhm.
my life, like as a child, as a teenager, becoming an adult and like having to make decisions, like fearful of making the wrong decision. But I think what it comes down to is like I've always been able to let go of there being, kind of like this right and wrong decision. And I think actually you reminded me of this kind of recently, but just trusting my gut and following my heart in everything that I do, because I know that if I'm doing it with the best intentions and what I feel like is going to be setting my soul on fire, then I know that that's the right decision for me. And so essentially how I ended up to where I am now.
Yeah.
And so when I say like making big decisions, like when I was in college, I was, a single mom. I was doing online school. I was, working full time, and I was getting a degree in aeronautical science, and I wasn't 100% sure what I wanted to do with that exactly. But again, I kind of just like followed my heart with that. But fast forward to about 10 years later, and I was given the opportunity to expand beyond aviation because I was in the aviation space. I was given the opportunity to kind of venture out into the space industry a little bit and see what that was all about. And in order for me to do that, I had to quit my full time job. Now, at this point, I was married and we had two kids, still have two kids. And being a dual income household with two kids to take care of, that was a huge leap of faith. And so not only did I take a sacrifice for myself, but my family took a sacrifice for that as well. And we had to make a lot of lifestyle changes. But I knew in my heart that like when my kids see my husband and I like chase our dreams and, make sacrifices and do the things that we love, that they're going to grow into being the best humans that they can possibly do. And they'll be empowered to also do the same thing to make those choices for themselves.
Yeah, totally. I think that's one of the things I love, like, about I actually love too, like, whenever I talk about you guys that were on the retreat, like, my oldest daughter, she's always like, "Oh, yeah, Camille, I know her. Oh, yeah, Emily." Like, it's fun to have that little bit of connection, like, she knows who you guys are, but I think the other part of it is, like, for me, when your kids see you taking those risks and doing the things and stepping outside the comfort zone, it gives them the permission to do it too. Like, it gives them that, like, look, my mom is pursuing these big goals and she's doing these big things and she's, going after what really sets her soul on fire instead of just trying to hold it in. It really, I think, does is that lead by example, right? Like, I know either, like, my mom wasn't, but, like, you hear of moms that just, like, stayed at home and they took care of the kids and they made all the lunches and, like, that was all they did, and so those women grow up feeling like, well, that's what moms do. Moms don't pursue stuff outside the house. They, like, stay home and they take care of the kids and that's all they do. There's nothing wrong with that, but I'm just saying, like,
No.
there's this expectation and this, like, we give our kids, like, examples in whatever we're doing and however we're doing it and like what we create possible for them. So I know one of the things you and I talked about like with this was that on the aerospace, just aviation space is not really an area that many women are in. And so I know that for you, like navigating through that and one, like even just like I remember at the retreat, you said something about like the conversation around like making babies in space and like can people actually like be pregnant in space? And it's like, well, these are conversations I would never have even thought about. But even the conversations just around like our period and femininity and being a woman from that very biological way, like space, but also in the societal expectations and those areas and those arenas that women aren't oftentimes haven't been, I shouldn't say often aren't, haven't been in the past very well integrated in. Like, what has that journey been like for you?
So I have been working in aviation aerospace since 2012, I think. So almost 15 years, about 13 years. And it is very male dominant. In fact, the university that I graduated from, although I did go, I did everything online, so I wasn't actually on campus. I think the the percentage of female at the university was like 5% at the time
Wow.
that I started. It was Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, and it is a very aviation aerospace heavy university. And so just like I've always been in a situation where I'm in a male dominant field or male dominant roles. And I think that, especially as women, like we have this, this idea that we have to try to be someone specific, be someone big, be someone bold and confident and leadership. And especially when we're in a male dominant role, we feel like we have to match that energy in
Yeah.
order to get the opportunities that they are getting. And I feel like there's been lots of times when, either myself or I have a lot of female friends in the industry that have shared stories that are just, it sounds like we're making these things up, like things that people say that people actually say. It's just insane to me. And, like recently I just launched my brand new website, and there's a little bit of an about me section down at the bottom. And my best friend is a photographer. She's amazing. She's so talented, but she's also like, every time we get together, she's like, let's play around with this photo shoot. I just want to try some new things. And so I wore this like really elaborate, like, like long black skirt, long sleeve shirt with like fringes on the sleeves. It had stars on it. And I just did like this really empowering photo shoot with her. And I felt so feminine. I felt so bright. I felt so powerful, and empowered. And so when I was looking at pictures to choose for my About Me section, I was like, these are the photos I want to use because this is me. This is who I am. This is who I where I felt like I was radiating positive energy and joy and like most unapologetically myself. And so I made an announcement about my new website online on social media and on LinkedIn and everything. And everybody was, so excited about the new website. They said it looked great. And then I had this one guy that commented on my website, and he was like, I can't even remember exactly how he worded it, but he basically said in the comments that I need to show more of my professional intelligence side and get rid of the pictures with fringes because that makes me look less intelligent
Hmm.
and less professional. And I was like, why? First of all, why do you feel like you get to comment on what women wear? First of
Hmm.
all. Second, just because I have fringe on my sleeves or I decide to wear sequins on my jacket or wear bright pink doesn't mean I am any less intelligent or less professional or less capable of
Yeah.
doing my job. And I think like old me would have been really disheartened by that. But I've learned that I'm kind of one of those people that like tell me I can't do something or tell me I shouldn't do it and I'll do it tenfold. So I kind of just like owned that. But it's just crazy to me what these people will do and say. And then I had another experience where someone came up to me and they said, first of all, they mistook me for someone else, but it was a panel that I was supposedly speaking on about women engineers, being a female engineer in the aerospace industry. And apparently, this female said that she felt that men were mean to her because she was a female engineer. And so, this man who came up to me thinking I was that person said, you were wrong. Men aren't mean to you because you're a female engineer. That's just the way they are. Like trying to
Yeah.
justify various actions and behaviors and things. And I think that, like, to overcome that, what has honestly really helped me more than anything is not looking at, menstruation and my cycle and all these different phases we go through as like it's such a burden to be a woman right now because I just started my period, or it's such a burden to be a woman right now because I'm feeling really luteal. Instead, feeling empowered by every single phase of my cycle. And I didn't learn any of that until I met you. And it's
Hmm.
like, wow, I was like 34, 35 when I met you. Like, I wish I had known these things. Like, how magical would my life had been,
Yeah.
had I embodied this mentality earlier in my life,
Yeah. 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 Cause I imagine like being in a space like that. And I know you work in the place of like leadership and communication and all those types of things, which in a lot of ways is very feminine. Like those, it's about relationships, it's about communication, it's about connection, and yet how that helps you succeed in your space and like in your industry and on your teams and whatever you're doing. I mean, I just imagine there's this element of have to feel, you feel like you have to diminish who you really truly are to succeed in that. And I see that happen too with like a lot of women in corporate, this feeling, this expectation. I even just recently was in New York City and watching people was so just amazed at the energy that existed there in New York City versus like I live in San Diego. The person was like an engineer and she's like, at our office we come in wearing flip-flops and like board shorts and whatever else, versus like what I saw in New York City is like everybody's in their suits, everybody's walking down in these like high heels, and how the culture that you're surrounded with so much shapes the expectations of what's professional, what's feminine, what's intelligent, what's whatever. It's all just the meaning that we place on it. And we start to pull back and we start to look at like, who told me this is what professionalism looks like? Who told me this is what femininity looks like? This is who told me any of this? And then you get to decide. Then you get to choose what that really looks like for. And is like you're like you said, 100%. What you wear and how you embody that has nothing to do with what's in your head or what's in your heart or the actions that you take. And I feel like there's just so much censorship on people of really truly expressing who they are and like what they want to be and like what is acceptable and what's not acceptable in certain spaces and in certain roles.
Yeah, absolutely. It reminds me of a time, another situation that happened to me when I was just getting my new job as an aircraft accident investigator. And I went into an office. I had to go to Dallas to do some training, and I met with some insurance firms and things like that. And I remember meeting with a guy in his office, and I was wearing this cute, like professional white dress and like a small little heel, it was like a 1 inch heel. And I looked good. Like I looked professional. I looked good. And I walked into his office and he was like, well, tell me about yourself. And so I was telling him a little bit about me and, things like that. And he looked at me with so much skepticism and he was like, you just don't really look like the kind of person that would be getting into an aircraft engine. Part of me gets where he's coming from, but at the same
Mhm.
time, why not?
Yeah.
Why can't I be in an office in a workplace, but also get down and dirty, crawl around on the floor of an aircraft hangar and dive into an engine and get oil on my hands and pull wreckage out of trees and stuff? Like, why can't I be that person? I'm adventurous, but I'm also glamorous. And I love that
Mhm.
about me. But I think I was at such a young age when that happened. I was probably 24, maybe.
Mhm.
And it was really impactful to me in that moment, and I took it to heart, and
Yeah.
I kinda stopped with, the dressing up a little bit because I felt like I was just too much, you know?
Mhm.
And it really took me some time to, own who I was and step into my power and be okay with the fact that, yeah, I can put lip gloss on before I go hit the gym, or I can put, glitter in my hair if I want to, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
So,
Do you feel like there was something in that journey that made that possible for you? Because I imagine that not every woman goes on that journey and like comes out on the other side and is like, I own both parts of me. I own that I can get down and dirty and I can get into the engine. And also I like my luxury and I like my glam. Like there's some people probably I think who are still wrestling with that, like they feel maybe even split identities or like there's different parts of themselves. Like I think this probably goes layers into many different parts of us, like that. But that feeling of like I have to hide a part of who I am, even just like thinking like online business, right? When we post on social media and the trolls come out or the people say stuff or the whatever, like it expands beyond just like showing up as who you are in this like male dominated field, and it's more of like how do I step into this place where I'm okay being all versions of me and like truly being fully authentic me in those spaces despite what people have. Like, cause I mean, I see that in you and I know like at this point you've owned it. Like that's part of you. And I know there's probably still areas that you're growing in that, but
for
that's
sure.
that feeling though of like, I get to be my and like, I get to be all parts of these of me and nobody gets to say anything else. Like that journey doesn't like that journey or that feeling, that owning of that doesn't just come out of nowhere. So what do you feel like has been for you that made that possible? Like that's been a part of that journey?
Yeah, I think early on, there's probably a few things, but I think early on, I was never a sporty girl. Like I did cheer and dance, and I played an instrument when I was in high school and middle school. So, I mean, like ball sports weren't really my thing. Like doing hardcore physical exercise wasn't really my thing. But, after I had my son, I was like really in this place of survival. And I'll kind of go back for a second. I got pregnant at 18 and I ended up having him when I was 19. And, I was at a very early age in this moment of survival where I had to do everything I could to make sure that my baby and I were safe. And I think, I neglected my self care for so long and like who I was for so long because I wanted to make sure that everything was, situated. And I heard about CrossFit really early on, and I dabbled in lifting weights and things like that at a gym a few times a week. And then I started to build strength physically, like physical strength. Like I
Mhm.
noticed muscles that I had never had before. I noticed that I was like, I was able to move better. I felt more functional. I could just like lift heavier weights. And I found myself just randomly picking heavy things up to see if, like, am I strong enough to pick this up? I don't know. Let me try. And so I really fell into what they call like the CrossFit cult. And I started competing and I was working out like 4 to 6 hours a day for like 5 to 6 days a week. And I did all of these competitions. And something that I discovered through that process, which was probably a total of 10 years, but I competed really hardcore for about 6 years. But what I discovered in that entire process is that we put all of these limiting beliefs on ourselves of what we are capable of. And sometimes we need someone who believes in us just a little bit more than we believe in ourselves. And so I feel like I was really fortunate enough to have, little sparkles of people here and there that gave me those opportunities. They did believe in me just a little bit more than I believed in myself until I was strong enough in those moments to believe in myself. And it may be doing a specific skill, it may be lifting a specific amount of weight or running a specific distance or something like that. But I built so much confidence in the gym that I started to see that transition into my everyday life. It transitioned into my career, my ambitions, my aspirations, and all my goals, like my relationships, everything. And I just felt more capable. And I knew that there really wasn't such thing as failing at this point. Like we don't fail back, we always fail forward because we learn something from it. And I think that's what really taught me so much. Like I could show up as whoever I was. I could fail a lift and I could try it again at a lower weight and then I could try it again and then I could keep building strength and I could try it again. And I think that has given me so much confidence to just embody who I truly actually am in the gym and then outside of the gym.
Yeah.
And then I think the next missing piece to that was like really feeling empowered with being a woman and through my cycle.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and like what you talk about too is like I hear so many times people talk about like borrowing confidence from another area. So like if you feel
Mhm.
really inconfident speaking on stage or whatever it might be, like where do you feel really confident and how can you borrow that? Or like when we think about like money or abundance, like thinking when we think of like what are all the ways that you feel really abundant, like borrowing that abundance of like I feel abundance of love, but not money, but like how can we keep that abundance of love energy and kind of like borrow it for this money sort of thing. And so it's kind of that same idea of what you're talking about of like building confidence or building abundance or building this energy in one area. It ripples into all areas. Like we cannot it's like when we think about like business or life, like we can't compartmentalize ourselves and say like what I do in this one area isn't going to have these ripples into these other areas. And I know you were on the call this morning when we were in the Flow Collective and we are talking about like pleasure. It's like when we experience pleasure in one area of our life, it's going to ripple into other areas of our lives. And so like looking at all of those things, like we are not, I just think in society, we think that we're like these compartmentalized little people that we like go to work and we show up as this work version and we come out here and we show up as this version, but we really bleed all the way around all together and then like overlaps in so many ways. And when we start to tap into that of like, hey, how can I actually influence this over here by accessing this energy over here in a completely different realm, it really makes a huge difference. I've noticed that so much. I know that when you first came to the retreat, it was kind of spontaneous. It was on a whim. Like I don't know if you were you following me for a really long time before that, or was it
I was probably, yeah, it was probably like 6 months maybe that I
okay?
was following you. Yeah.
But I know that that was kind of like our first interaction. You were just like, "Hey, I'm gonna come." That's okay. It's like really excited over there.
Yeah.
Um, you're like, "I'm gonna come. I'm gonna do this." And then I think it really I'm just curious if that was like the beginning point of you understanding the cycle, or was the cycle something that you had been doing kind of previous to that? Like, tell us a little bit about that journey in terms of like what it's looked like, because it sounds like that's been a big part of that journey for you too. Of like, what did that embracing, like, what did that look like for you?
So I think when I first stumbled upon your Instagram, it was like this chart and it showed like the different levels of hormones
Yeah.
and like the different phases of the cycle. And I think at that point, I was like cycle curious. I was like, what is this? This is, I mean, yeah, that's me. Like, I'm a woman and I have a period, but like, what is this? And so I started looking into it. And I had already started my company. So I started my company like April of 2022, and I was winging it. Like, I mean, I think we all are at some point, for the most part, but like, I was totally winging it, no idea what I was doing. And I was like, burning out. Like I thought that I was like I had to like do all of these things really fast as well as possible. And, over time, like that's not sustainable. We can do little spurts of sprints here and there, which is, appropriate at some points.
Yeah.
But, I was burning out. And when I saw like that little graph, I was like, so you're telling me that I could be doing this all differently and I might actually be more productive. And so that's kind of like when I started looking into it. And I would take like little tiny things like here and there, just like as simple, even just like the idea of, taking your menstruation week off. That wasn't, feasible for me completely, but I did schedule less meetings that week and I gave myself more grace during that week and things like that. And sometimes when I was stuck on what I should be focusing on because I was so overwhelmed that, everything had to get done right now, the best way for me to prioritize and figure out what needed to be done if there wasn't a deadline was like, what phase of my cycle am I in? And what is going to be the most productive at this point of my cycle?
Mhm.
And I think that was kind of like the start of all of it. And so I was really excited to go into the retreat the first time because I was like, I can't take this long away from work. Like, this is ridiculous, but it's a business retreat. So
Yeah.
it's okay. We're going to be doing business things. So it's fine. I like don't have to completely shut out and tune everything out. And so when I went, it was, I had no idea what to expect at all, but it was completely different than what I thought there might be going on. When you hear business, you think like people have their laptops open. You think we're like, writing whatever we need to write or, whatever that might be. But it was more about tuning into yourself. And I think that point was really impactful, not just for myself and for my company, but for how I help and work with people in my industry
Yeah.
because what I do is I do help people optimize leadership. I help them, become more credible and gain more influence. I help them communicate better. I help them navigate conflict because when you're going into these analog missions, you are essentially a six strangers in a small enclosed room for 30 days. That was my very first mission. And I
Yeah.
had no idea who these people were. And so I had not met you yet. And I had not, I didn't know anything about, the cycle. Like all the girls on the mission got our periods at the same time. Like it would have been so fun had I known all of this information for 30 days. Like that would have been so exciting. But there there's so much there's so many gaps in like how we communicate with people because they're also international people. You know, you have people with different cultures, different traditions, backgrounds, languages. You know, English isn't always their first language. Some are more technical, some are more creative. It just kind of depends. And so being able to coexist and accomplish specific tasks for a period of time with strangers, it takes a lot of really knowing who you are at your core. And I really didn't realize how much I needed that until
Mhm.
I was given that space to do it. It's one of those things where we all, especially in aerospace, which is exactly people that I help right now, is, you know, we all think that we have to continue to get more degrees or more credentials, or we have to have that, you know, fancy PhD title in front of our name or something like that to be seen and be heard and be recognized. But that's not actually what we need. We need to
Yeah.
be more self aware. We need to be more grounded. We need to be able to hear, not just speak. And we need to be able to present ourselves in a way that is true to ourselves and
Mhm.
then also that is receptive to other people because people can sense when you aren't embodying yourself. They can sense it.
Yeah.
And it comes off as gross or it gives them the ick or something. I mean, I can sense it with some people. Like if I'm in a room at a conference and I can tell that someone's not being authentically themselves, like I would rather you show up in a t-shirt and jeans and, you know, like slouch a little bit more if you're going to be more realistic yourself. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's just, you know, that's not always the case. Obviously, you have to be professional at a professional conference, but at the same time, it's like you want people to be more grounded and be more aware of themselves. And I have learned over the period of time that we've been together, and since you know discovering more about myself, that that is grossly missing in our industry. People
Mhm.
are credential happy, like you know, I'm
Mhm.
so excited to share that I just got this, you know, credential or I just received this award. Look at me. Look at all of these things I've accomplished. Okay, but are you grounded?
Yeah.
Like, are you yourself? Do you like, can we hold a conversation, not just an intelligent conversation, but can we get to know the real us? You
Yeah.
know, something that was so cool was I went to a conference recently and one of my friends, Sarah Sabry, she is an astronaut for Blue Origin and she was hosting a fundraising event. It was like a really exclusive fundraising event. We were in Milan, Italy. It was like so dreamy. And we're in this little like boutique bar restaurant. And they did a networking activity. And when you see networking at a conference, you're like, oh, everybody's in suits, really stuffy, shake hands, give each other a business card. What do you do? What do you do? You know?
Yeah.
No, her networking event was like a bingo card and you had to get to know people. You had to get to know like what their favorite movie was, if it was the same as yours. You had to get to know if they like had a pet dog. You got to know them for them. Some of the most successful business relationships that I have and that some of my friends that came away from that event have are from that room,
Mhm.
not from the 5 other days of doing the like official conference networking event where everybody's doing a
Mhm.
meet and greet. It was that room. It was that
Yeah.
moment. And it
Yeah.
was so powerful because everybody felt like they could truly be themselves. There were no
Yeah.
rules.
Okay, there was so much in there. So,
Sorry.
no, it was all really, really good. I think, like, one of the things that came up for me was that idea of, like, femininity, like, whether you're male or female or non-binary or whatever you are, like, this essence of, like, femininity is so needed in business, in aerospace, in government, in politics. Like, it's so needed right now. Like, I just look at, like, that human to human connection and the relationship piece is a deeply feminine trait and quality, and it's like, we need that so vastly. The other thing that you mentioned, like, so when I did my VIP day with Sam, we went out to dinner and we were sitting there in this like restaurant and I looked over at her and I was like, do you ever just like look around at people at a restaurant and think, who are you? Like, what do you do? Because in a restaurant or like on an airplane or on a bus or wherever, there's like this anonymity. Like you could be sitting right next to a world famous artist or a whatever. Like you just have no idea. Like you're in just everybody's the same when you're in this like restaurant environment or when you're on an airplane or whatever. And it sparked this whole conversation about like, she's like, I've met the coolest people sitting on the plane, like talking to the people next to me. And like, you think about it, because like it's one activity that almost like neutralizes us all, right? Like we all have to eat, so we're all just eating in this restaurant like side by side. Maybe as a fancier restaurant or a not so fancy one, like there may be some elements there, but like at the end of it, like we all have to eat, we all have to get from one destination to the next, and like so there's this like we put ourselves on this like even playing field. But yet you sit there and you're like, wow, we are all so different, but it brings that humanity to it. And I think like that's what you're talking about too, is like this bingo card. There's like this humanity of like, you're a human with a dog at home that pees on the floor too. Like what? Like, like, or, oh, your dog interrupts your conversations, or like whatever it might be. Like it creates this level of like, oh, we actually connect on a deeper level than just this like show and tell that we put on. And it's those conversations and those pieces that really make the biggest difference. And then lastly, I'll just throw it in there. I know this is a little side note, but what if you created a certification for your program? Just a side note.
Well,
If
so
if
yeah,
people are loving the certifications, what if your program was a certification? But we can talk about that later.
I do have a certification. It's a little bit different, and it's not catered just to like the aerospace industry as a whole. It's more specifically if you're going to be an analog astronaut and you're going to, work and live in one of the, in an isolated, confined or extreme environment. So I do have like a certification like that, but I've thought about that, and it's not a terrible idea. I think it's a really great idea. And a lot of people have actually reached out and asked, if they could get more information so they can see if their work will pay for it, because it's technically like, team building and leadership and things like that.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of element to what I do that's not just self awareness, it's also team awareness, because when we're
Yeah.
working with crews, a lot of the times, you can't really have team awareness until you have self awareness. But once you do have that, or a level of it, or an understanding of what yours looks like, then you can begin to excel in the team dynamic. And when
Mhm.
we're in a survival state with just a few other people, we have to trust those people. Like we have to blindly trust them. We have to understand that they've got our back, we got their back. It's not going to always be 50-50. And so we're essentially, surviving together in these environments. So, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, it's intense. Like there's a level of, like you said, where in our lives, other than those types of situations, do we really have to put that trust or that on the line? It's a very different experience for sure.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
okay, paint the picture. What's possible? Where is Emily headed?
Oh, well, this is kind of new for me. New in the sense that, like, I just kind of recently had a breakthrough moment, and like you and I have talked about this a little bit. But just like over the past weekend, I'll just kind of like reshare this story for everyone. But there's a point in your cycle where you just feel like you want to burn everything down to the ground, and it is most often always during your luteal phase. And I didn't like connect the two of those things together until you kind of started talking about it. And so I would recognize like when I felt like I wanted to burn my business down, what phase of my cycle was I in? And it was always luteal. And recently I got to a point where I was like, I don't know what direction this is going. I think I want to burn my business down. And I was like, wait, something is off here because I am very follicular right now. I should not be wanting to burn my business down. What is going on? So I kind of gave myself this space to think about where that feeling was coming from.
Mhm.
And I did a lot of meditation and like tried to get into alignment with who I've been and who I am now and the people that I want to serve. And I work with individuals and crews. I worked with individuals and crews who were preparing for isolated, confined, and extreme environments in an area that I'm very knowledgeable in, and that is communication, conflict management, decision making, and problem solving, things like that. I am a woman that has been in a male dominant field for so long, and I know that I have burnt myself out endlessly trying to accomplish the next thing just so I could be recognized, just so I could be seen, just so I could be heard. I want to work with those women who are in the same boat. I want to work with those women that are in the male dominant fields that they feel like they have to get another credential or another degree or another certification. I want them to know that they don't necessarily have to do that. They need to be more grounded, and I want to help them get there. I want to get to the place where they can stand out without having to raise their voice, without having to say, hey, look at me, look what I'm doing, look what I can do for you. I want them to be wanted. I want them to feel wanted. And so I'm really excited about what this could potentially do moving forward. And I don't know that it's something that I want to focus specifically on women. I think, I love working with men too. I like working with individuals and groups of people. So there's kind of just like a lot to unfold because this is so new. This feeling, this excitement is so new. So we'll see. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I got chills. I think like just hearing you and that in your voice and like what's there for you, like that energy, like it is so needed. And because I think it is, it's like, I mean, like that feeling is not just isolated to your industry. That feeling of like,
Yeah.
I have to get the next certification. I have to prove myself. I have to validate myself. I have to, to be able to be recognized and be seen and be heard. I think it's a very common, not common, but I would say it's a very relatable sort of feeling for people of the sense of like, I don't know what it is about me that I need to do to be able to be validated and seen and heard and like recognized. And you just exude that. Like you exude such a powerful confidence. But I will also add that you are like so fun and playful. And absolutely loved like every time, like this retreat we talked about this year's retreat. It was like retreat 2.0, maybe 3.0. Like it got a little intense and it got a little wild, but I think it was the combination of like your energy and everybody else's energy that was there just create this magical moment. And I think so much of that comes from that essence of like you truly are fully embodied and like in this energy of playfulness and like I know who I am and I'm willing to step out of the box here and I'm willing to lean in here. And to do that self awareness, I think you may or may not recognize this, but like the awareness and the depth that you've gone is it's like amazing. It's amazing to see. And I think that you're leading that pathway for many women to feel like that femininity, not even just like femininity in the sense of like, I like the fringe, but the femininity of like, it's safe for me to feel and safe for me to be myself in those spaces it's like amazing. I don't know. I felt like there was
Yeah.
another word there, but amazing was the word that came. It feels very inadequate to like place there. But that like it's like that there needs to be some revolution. There needs to be some shakeup in those male dominated spaces where it doesn't feel safe to be heard and seen when you're a woman, or it doesn't feel safe to be felt like to express your feelings. Like feelings aren't acceptable, right? And there's a way in those high stakes environments to like still process what you're feeling and also keep the rest of the crew safe and like and be aware because I think it's really dangerous, right? Like when we just stuff all those feelings down and we don't let those
Yeah.
feelings like actually have an avenue of like being present to them because then they blind us and they make us take actions that aren't safe and things like that. So there's like that balance of both.
Absolutely. Yeah. And like so I'm actually getting ready to do an entire masterclass series on these 8 competencies that NASA trains all of their astronauts in before they actually send them to the ISS. And, going over these competencies, I'm like, wow, these are things that the basic human being should have an awareness to some level. And the
Yeah.
very first masterclass series is actually self awareness and self management. And it goes with the whole thing of put your oxygen mask on yourself first before your
Mhm.
child. Because if you're not grounded and you're not taking care of yourself, you're not going to be in a place to be able to do that for other people. And so I've
Mhm.
been on missions. I did one mission in a cave in Spain, and I was the commander. And there were there's like this different level of responsibility that you take on when you're leading a crew in this environment. I almost instantly went to the back when everybody was walking through the cave to get to the habitat because I wanted to make sure that I had eyes on everyone. But what was really interesting and what I loved, we didn't even talk about this, but my vice commander, she was in front of me and she kept looking back and she kept checking on me too. And I was like, wait a minute, that's like a good reminder. Like, I need to make sure that I'm also okay. I'm also following the rules. I'm also being safe. I'm also, not just trying to push off the fact that, like, I might have a hurt ankle or something like that. I didn't, but, I need to be in tune with myself just as much as I am in tune with everyone else. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
totally.
for sure.
For sure. Is there anything you feel like we left out or that you want to leave people with or add to the conversation?
I think I already said this, but like I just cannot stress enough the importance of getting rid of the limiting beliefs that you might have about what it might be to be a woman and how you should show up versus how you want to show up. You know, I think coming off as your most authentic self and creating space for yourself to sit with that and really understand who you are is what is necessary in order to get you to that next step. Like I work with so many people who are just trying to get to the surface or they've plateaued in their jobs, in aerospace or something and they're really trying hard to get to that next step. But like once you're able to really embody that femininity that we all have and allow yourself to show up as your authentic self, that's when those breakthroughs happen. And I think that has been key for me. That and just like, as long as you're making decisions out of the best intentions for yourself and your loved ones, you're never making the wrong choice, ever, as hard as it is.
Yeah, so good. Emily, this was amazing. I truly appreciate you and I appreciate having you in the Flow Collective and like on the retreats and all the things. Where can people follow you, learn more about what you've got going on, connect with you, go share with Emily like how amazing this was, all of those things.
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram and LinkedIn. And my Instagram is interstellar_EM. And then my LinkedIn is just my name, Emily Apollonio. And then my company is Interstellar Performance Labs. And we are on both platforms as well.
Perfect. I will make sure to have all that linked up in the show notes. And so you guys can go check that out and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you so much, Renee. It's been so much fun.